Welcome to Breach Ready Radio. This is where we sit down with the people shaping cybersecurity to talk about what they're seeing, what they've learned the hard way, and what's really happening behind the headlines. From real-world breach stories to sharp perspectives on where the industry is heading, we keep it practical, honest, and useful. I'm your host, Sean Ferguson with Securonix. Let's get into it. Thanks for joining us, Ken. Tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, my name is Ken Weston. I am currently a senior solutions engineer at LimaCharlie. We are a cloud platform for security tools. The majority of our customers are MSSPs and MDRs, but I've been in security for almost 2 decades now. Everyone's asking me how to get into security, and I'm trying to find my way out.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate you coming on today. We're going to get right into it.
Yeah, so one of the questions I had too, and we've known each other for a while and been in this space for a while, but kind of what's your take on the agentic AI in the real world and threat defense? Also, I mean, even from the attacker's perspective.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more agentic AI tools that are being used not only by defenders, but also attackers. I think a lot of the kind of the low level types of things like, basic data manipulation, some basic analysis and things like that. At least on the defensive side, a lot of stuff that, analysts like at the level 1 and 2 types of work, that seems to be kind of the low hanging fruit for a lot of this. I haven't really seen it evolve too much into a lot more of the advanced types of, techniques like running exploits and things like that. But it's probably only a matter of time as the technology evolves. But I think, it's having an impact right now on the defense side of things, because I know it's more optimistic, I think, that the AI is going to be replacing people and things like that. I think the better approach is just more, how do we leverage AI and some of these technologies to make the people we have more efficient with what they're doing, let them focus on more interesting human problems, versus, trying to, do things that can be automated and things like that. So I think there's sort of a balance here that needs to occur. And I think it'll usually tends to figure itself out. But unfortunately, there's probably going to be some major breaches that happen before people learn a lesson. But that's just kind of par for the course, I think, in security.
That'll take a little bit to kind of unwind, because we already have this cybersecurity shortage, as you know, and there is also this kind of less, I would say, there's less of this push for cybersecurity hiring, like you were saying, for level 1 SOCs, which kind of makes the barrier of entry difficult. And we're seeing this in marketing too, in the sense of you have, junior designers, junior comms, junior demand gen who feel like they can't break through because of the AI aspect of it. Like their job's already being done, what they're taught in college is being done. I'm mentoring some people out of college, and that's one of the questions. It's like everything I've been taught and I'm coming out of here is already being done by AI. Do you think we'd have a hiring surge? Do you think that there's going to be a sense of even more shortage for cybersecurity professionals?
I think so, but I think like a lot of the vibe coding and things like that is actually creating more security vulnerabilities. I've seen it constantly. A lot of times people are doing things that are not necessarily, they don't understand how it's working or what it's doing, things like that. And so those sorts of visibility gaps are going to increase the potential for breach, right? It's going to increase the risk. And I think the need for people that actually understand these tools and things like that over time are going to become more increasingly in demand, I think. You can have all these AI tools and things like that, but you still need to have someone train those AI tools. You need someone that's going to maintain those tools, that's going to observe them and make sure that they're doing things correctly, right? Validating what they do. And kind of when I leverage it, I write a little bit of code with it. Like I hate regular expressions, so I'll use AI to be doing things that I don't like, but it does a good job of it. But I'm not going to have it write an application for me, right? I would do sort of little components, little pieces, and I'm going to be able to review its code and things like that. But I'm not going to have it go write an application and 100% trust that it's going to be, secure, right? And I think that's where I think there's going to be a lot more demand for people that actually know their stuff. Like just like in art and music, I think there's becoming more of a demand. I'm seeing it already, like folk music and like live music. People are more interested in that than some of the electronica, because this AI stuff, it's soulless. It's just regurgitated stuff that sounds like everything else that's out there. And so if anything, I think what it's going to do is make humans become more creative, like do things that the AI can't do. I think, you can see that in art, you'll see it in writing, in creativity, but I think that also is going to carry over into cybersecurity, because after all, cybersecurity really is a creative pursuit. It's not, hacking and things like that is not all technical. It's creative uses of technology, right? And I think that creativity side of things is always going to win, and that's a very human element, right? I know.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. Is like with a lot of maturity, and we're doing that on our end as well. There's a responsibility now forming for that. While like AI might be taking over the low level, and then same kind of what we were talking about with the music, and even what we're seeing in PR and comms. There was a time where people were just ChatGPTing and putting it out there, and now every single competitor sounds the exact same. There has to be human touch to it. It helps. I mean, I use it for very early drafts. It's like, okay, let's get a structure down. Let's do best practices, because I know best practices, but I'm not going to take that. Yeah, I can take that 30 minutes to write it, but the AI will help me do that best practices I've already trained it on to get it out there, and then I need to go in there and put my touch on it. Similar to cybersecurity too. We can have that level 1 and level 2, but each system is different. Each gap is different. It needs to be trained. It needs to be monitored, and nothing is perfect.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I blame marketing. Like, I think I blame tech marketing for kind of this position we're in, because a lot of the AI stuff. I mean, I saw this when I was at Splunk, when we were, pitching UBA and things like that. And, the marketing folks will say, yeah, this replaces your analyst. You don't need a SOC and blah, blah, blah. And, that was like, when we get in there, it was further from the truth. We would get into people who have these tools deployed, and we'd be, getting like all these alerts, and it's from an IP address, and they don't know where the hell that IP address is. It's in some data center. They have no idea what, they didn't have the basics of like asset inventory and things like that sorted, right? And so I think what happened was, like anything AI, it's like, oh yeah, we can replace it, and all these huge promises, right? I think particularly in LLMs, where this sort of the new thing, because it looked like it thinks, but really what it was, it's a mechanical Turk, right? So it's not really playing chess. It's like underneath the chessboard is all of these prior works, right? That's what we found. Like, all these models were trained on, like with Meta, they pirated books. Like, their models were all trained on pirated books and content and other material. And we even saw that a few years back at a vendor when we hired them to write like blog posts for us. And it was such a niche topic that they were writing. You could tell they did ChatGPT, because we ran it through what was it, like the plagiarism checker, and we found that it was a competitor's blog. It was basically copying that content. Yeah, so we know the LLMs, that it's based off all of this existing content, and that that's why I think artists are like, they're reasonably upset. It's stealing their work. It's doing all these things and trying to replace them. And I think. I don't know, lawyers are going to have a field day. I think that, just like every sort of new technology that evolves, it's the lawyers that always win. They're the ones that are going to make all the money.
Yeah, we kind of jump on that. And like, I wouldn't say it's just tech marketing. I say marketing in general and just public perception, because when this new thing came out and it became consumer friendly, the average person can use it. It was like, hey, this will cure everything. This will fix everything. And it just became this pipe dream. Not to put my Securonix hat on, but we did do predictions, and I'm sure you guys did too with your philosophy. Now is the year of the AI hype. Has to be backed by proof. You have to be able to do what you already said you're going to do. And the people that weren't and were falling into that hype and falling into yeah, just deploy it and you're good to go, is going to bite them. They're going to start churning, and they're going to start really affecting. And not only that, I mean, we really think about it too. It's almost a disservice to your customers, because you are making them vulnerable. You are keeping them open to hacks and 0 days and hallucinations and false positives. That's why are you even selling cybersecurity? If you're not there to help the customer, protect them from breaches, and it's costly overall. And I see it you're right, with the training on that. We ran into some of that at my previous company, where it was very much proponent of just write with ChatGPT, and it was like, we Googled a blog that we did, and like I said, there's our competitors. We write the exact same blog, just different words. One, you're not standing out. Two, it's not genuine. There's no thought leadership behind it. And three, I mean, it is plagiarism. Who was the original writer of that? And anyone could go after us for that. It's wild. All right, switch gears a little bit. And we've talked about this in the past together. Like, tell me a good hacker story. Like, what is the wildest investigation or exploit you've seen that made you go, did that just happen? And you can even go back to the article that was written about you as well, being the cyber stalker.
Yeah. So yeah, I've kind of had an interesting history in cybersecurity. Again, like I got really interested in like USB-based Trojans at one point. Company I was at, they actually had technology that was blocking it. At that time, that was kind of like a new attack vector where we call it pod slurping, where I could plug in an iPod and steal data off the network or ESEC networks and things like that. But I ended up applying a lot of that for theft recovery purposes. And it led me down a lot of rabbit holes. So I built a lot of different tools. I built it for FLIR cameras, things like that, to track them. Like if you steal it, you plug it into a computer, it hijacks the computer it's connected to, uses internet connection to send data out, so you can use it for theft recovery and things like that. But I think one of the interesting things that we did too is I got really interested in EXIF data and images. And I found that the really high-end cameras like Canon and all that, they actually embed the make, model, and serial number of the camera that took the photo, but there wasn't really a way to search it. And so I was working with another startup friend of mine. They had this thing. It was kind of like, you can rent out your idle computer time, sort of like a SETI at home type of thing, but you can make money off of it. And he had access to a bunch of university computer labs where I was able to deploy this agent. So I mined all of Flickr and all of these other photo sharing websites, extracted all the EXIF data, and created a database that you could then search. So you could put the serial number of your camera in the make, and it'll show you all the photos we found online that were taken by that camera. It ended up being used for theft recovery. We ended up recovering like $8,000 worth of camera equipment for people. And, what was really interesting about that is just, people didn't realize that data was in there. And then once you actually had a way to search it, then we're able to go back and solve all these crimes, like stuff that happened, years before. Then they're also using it, of course, for innocent images, like child porn and things like that. I was able to give some of these government agencies access to this. So the idea there is that if Joe Pervert is in Disneyland taking a photo with his family and he's using the same camera that he was using to create these images, they'd be able to track him. They couldn't tell me specifically if it was they were able to get someone, but they said it was really useful tool for them. So I think it's just one of those things. I think just like AI and anything like that, like technology can all of a sudden just pop it up, and not only can we, like things change in the future, but also changes how we look at the past.
Yeah, they're definitely using it. They're saying that's very useful. You're not going to get anything back if it's like, oh, hey, thanks. Yeah. That's crazy. That's great though too, in the sense of that it went beyond what you intentionally were using it for. But now that they can, focus on trafficking and the selling and sharing of, like you're saying, CP, which is wild. That's just tied to the camera models. I do have to ask, is the EXIF data still tied to the camera making models to this day?
Yeah, but now like a lot of like the photo sharing websites and social media scrub it. This is really interesting though. Like there's been multiple cases where they found that like Meta, like when you upload a photo to Facebook, it strips it out of the image there, but they archive that data, and they actually will use that data for marketing purposes as well. Because a lot of times there's geotag data in there, and then if you see someone like with an expensive camera, right, then you can start to gear ads towards them, like for photography or whatever. So they are using that data themselves, and they do archive that data. So I also think that data can also be used by law enforcement or a government agency as well. So, and there have been cases where they do need that image, like information, like a missing teen or something like that, and they uploaded an image and maybe has GPS coordinates or something like that. So they still leverage that, I think, for their own purposes as well as law enforcement, but it's not surfaced to the consumer. So you can't necessarily go out and mine all this information. What's interesting is I did at one point mine Twitter. And even though Twitter removes the EXIF data from images you upload, at one point it didn't do it for your profile photos. So I went through and I actually mined all of the PFP photos even like tiny little images, and it had GPS coordinates embedded in the image. So I could get like, people that are trolls and things like that. They think they're anonymous. Well, if that was taken anywhere near your house or whatever, then I know where you live.
That's it's insane. And you don't think about that either, too. And there was a time where the GPS coordinates would be baked into almost every photo that they were uploading to Facebook. But that's still crazy. It's still to this day. And I guess with the Meta thing, like, yeah, that sucks that they're using it for their own advertising purposes, but there's still, it's good to hear there's still a realm for subpoenas, to access that data, and it's still being archived somewhere. I ran into some of that too, using TinEye too, when making sure there's any copyright issues too. But now TinEye is starting to slowly get more difficult to use because, like you said, everything is being stripped from that. So there's no true way other than pixel to pixel that they can, backtrack and search the internet for. I mean, there's also things too that people are opting out from TinEye, they're opting out from Google, reverse image search. But that's neat that they're still using the EXIF data there. Any other crazy story that you'd like to share?
Lately I've just been focusing a lot more on, this AI Claude stuff. So I haven't been doing too much on the outside, mostly like political stuff, but I don't like to get it too much into that.
Not right now.
About it.
Awesome. If you had to predict what will shape SOCs in 2026, tech people attacks, what are your big bets? I mean, I know you touched base on one of them with AI and how it's going to kind of shape the L1s, L2s, but kind of curious on your thoughts.
I think like incorporating AI, I think like in more of a hybrid model. I've written articles about this, like where I think what AI is being marketed towards is like it's being marketed as this Android autonomous agent thing when that's really not the case. When in actuality, it's more of a cyborg, right? The cyborg thing, more like RoboCop, where you're extending human capabilities, right? The human is still the one that's in control. And then you're extending their capabilities with the technology. And I think like the organizations that take that approach, like leveraging AI to, again, extend and make their existing folks more efficient in what they do, and allowing them to focus on more interesting topics, I think that's going to be really helpful. So again, freeing them up, using AI to kind of, do a lot of the mundane tasks, and then freeing up the threat hunters and things like that to do threat hunting or, doing more advanced detection engineering work, integrating additional tools and telemetry. I think, those sorts of things, freeing them up to, again, be more creative. I think it's going to make them happier, but also it's going to increase your overall security posture. And I think also allowing them to dabble in some of these AI tools. Yeah, you need to control it. I'm not going to, I even tell people like, don't, release Claude into your production environment, right? But, a little a test environment where you're testing some of these tools, having a better understanding of how they work. I think just setting up an LLM, I took this really great TCM security course just on, the basics of LLMs, understanding how neural networks work and things like that. I think that's going to be critically important, really understanding how all these different pieces kind of fit together. And then I think then you're going to be in a better position to leverage AI. But we've heard this song before, right? That's the AI silver bullet now, right? And it's never going to be a successful strategy. I think, again, taking more of a measured approach into hybrid, integrating these different tools and technologies over time, it's going to increase people's efficiencies and also hopefully likely, decrease the potential for increasing risk into your environment as well by doing that.
I love it. No, I agree completely. Yeah, I think there's kind of needs to be, I wouldn't even say it's a re-education. I'd say kind of just an education.
I know
that needs to happen in 2026 for sure, especially with all these things now being deployed with almost every company, cybersecurity and elsewhere, offering some form of AI. And we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice by not being smarter about it. We're going to have kind of the same scrutiny as we do with even social media. That Facebook went through and Twitter went through. It needs to happen now with AI and LLMs and just people understanding, okay, if I am going to put this out there, where is it going to live and who gets access to it? Thoughts on AI agents and cybersecurity? Do you prefer AI agents to be singular in the sense that they focus on one task? Or do you prefer agents that can do multiple things at once? And of course, human in the loop is an aspect in there.
Yeah, like lately we've been like LimaCharlie, some of the stuff we've been doing with Claude Code in particular, and so that allows you to do a lot of different things. And I've even got a demo where not only do I give Claude Code access to our MCP server, but we also have a bunch of cloud CLI. So I have AWS, I have Azure, GCP, and I let it go out and deploy agents. I let it go and I need you to, bring in the CloudTrail logs. I need you to deploy our EDR agent to the EC2 instances. It does out, it just goes out and does it like automatically. It's more of an experiment for this. I wouldn't do this in like a large production environment, but in these smaller controlled environments, I think it's been really interesting. It's been doing a really good job of it. And then we have smarter folks on our team. One of our founders, Christopher, he's great. He's been building a lot of skills as well, specifically for Claude Code and our tooling. And it sort of makes sense because a lot of our customers are more focused on more like SecOps, right? They're not always like the analysts and things like that. They're doing a lot of the data plumbing on the back end and things like that. And a lot of them, like they have hundreds of customers that they're managing, and we have multi-tenant environments and things like that. And so it kind of makes sense that they would leverage AI for a lot of this type of work. Whereas, especially if they're having to build like a custom adapter or something, kind of how I use it, like create a regular expression to parse this log or something like that. And so we're providing those tools for the customer, right? Because we find a lot of them are already using Claude Code. So now we're just providing a lot more hooks for them to be able to do that. We're going to be doing a large demo about that. I'm working on that all week. And I like that. Like it can do a lot of different things. But I can't see the need for like an agent to do one thing and do it really well and kind of keep some guardrails on it. So I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Like in the DevOps world, like you can do a little bit more here, especially if it's in like a dev test environment versus like something that it's going to be communicating with the production environment, things like that. That's where you probably want to have like more single focus and then a lot more guardrails around what that particular agent can do.
I know. I appreciate your thoughts on that as well. Yeah, we've been experimenting as well with our agents, and we talked about last year, the agentic mesh and having them be, like you were saying, singular focused, but still communicating into a larger neural network. So there is communication there. When you're talking about these kind of controlled productions, anything that you can share?
Well, one thing we do is we'll have it integrated into the product. We actually have like a smart Claude agent that's actually integrated into the product, and that does have some controls. It has access to the MCP server, but of course, it's not going to have access to like command line tools and things like that, like I would have on my laptop. And so that's really useful. And I've been experimenting with it more just to, administrative tasks, like, what orgs do I have access to? How many sensors do I have deployed? What's my MITRE attack coverage look like? And it actually creates really nice visual for me. Like it almost replaces reporting, the need for reporting. Because if you can just ask the AI questions, especially if you can trust it, right, then you can make some decisions based on that. And so that's really kind of cool. And then, the other stuff we're doing is, again, it's more on the DevOps side where, again, we're going to be having it, hey, go into the AWS environment and, get LimaCharlie configured, bring in the logs, parse them, deploy the EDR agents and things like that. And I think the more we do that, we're going to start to see more of our customers start to leverage that as well. And that just increases the amount of, or decreases the amount of time that they're going to get value out of our product, right? They're able to get that stuff deployed. They don't have to monkey with a lot of the data plumbing and things like that. You can leverage AI to handle a lot of that.
With regards to like the data too, we're talking about with AI agents and AI in general too, do you think we're going to start having or even running into a data scaling problem or even data cost issue down the line?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're already seeing that. It's like, well, if the Claude Code isn't cheap, you have to eat up all the tokens, and you also see a lot of the data centers that are ramping up, right? That's why we have memory shortages and things like that. Like there's sort of this arms race. I have a friend that works at Google. He actually works at the data center here in the Gorge, he's talking about how much they're ramping up their compute just for AI specifically, right? So I think. There's a bit of a gold rush, I think, in some respects for it. Whereas with LimaCharlie, our approach is more selling pickaxes in a gold rush. So providing capabilities where you can leverage these different tools without, like, we're not going to be, competing with Anthropic. We're not going to build our own Claude code, right? But if we can provide tools for you to plug those sort of AI brains into our platform, right? And they're going to get more value out of our platform as a result of that, then that's something we definitely need to do.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we're taking kind of a different approach from there. Is more just data management. Hey, what's important to you, and then funneling it in there and flexing where you need to. Is there something happening a little bit more on this side? So let's shrink this data pipeline and increase this data pipeline, and so on. Because we heard the same thing that you guys were hearing too. Like, there's this gold rush happening right now, and our customers kind of don't know how to manage this, or even there's a look at it from an Opex perspective when there's still a solution there, similar to like what you guys are running into. And it's just going to increase. I have a feeling. I mean, there will be I'll say, people keep talking about an AI bubble. I think there's probably going to be a data bubble where eventually you're going to run into people who are just going to be like, we're not going to pay that, to the data centers. And the price is going to have to come down, especially with how just the world is evolving. In cybersecurity, we're a little bit more in front of that and more in front of the data parsing and the data management. The rest of the world is now just kind of seeing it and seeing kind of the sticker shock there. All right, if you're a cybersecurity listening to this and thinking, how do I modernize my SOC without losing control? What's the one action that they could take either tomorrow or next week or next month?
I think it's good. Like a lot of the vendors right now that are, they're ramping up their AI capabilities. Usually, first thing is like an MCP server. But unfortunately, a lot of times some of that is like marketing crap, because like, yeah, they have an MCP server, but it doesn't do anything. It's like, it can give me a list of users, right? Like that sort of thing. We have an MCP server. But I think, starting to look at, what capabilities is being developed by some of these vendors. I think particularly on the SIM side, seeing how they're able to provide new capabilities and things like that. One thing that you got to be careful of, I think, is that they're going to try to use that as another way to nickel and dime you. So I think if, look at what they're offering for free, what's available to you. I think dipping your toe into some of these tools like Claude Code, I think, is critically important, just to at least understand how they work. Even just having one system like a low level subscription, being able to run them and things, I think it kind of opens your eyes to the technology. In some respects, I'm a Luddite, right? I don't like AI in some areas, like art and things like that. I think, and I also think that we need to focus on like human creative side of things and hacking and security. But at the same time, you also do need to, immerse yourself in the technology so you understand it, not only its strengths, but also its weaknesses.
With the amount of data being consumed and the amount of information kind of crossing channels, this is my own prediction, straight from just what I know. I see threat intelligence starting to pick up speed in 2026, just because of the volume that's going through there. I feel like that we're almost going to start creating vulnerabilities rather than solving them in that realm. I was curious on your take on that as well.
Again, threat intelligence is interesting right now. Like, AI might be able to help us make sense of some of that data. However, there's a lot less data that's being shared. There's like I hate to say it, get political, but there's a mistrust in the government. So a lot of people that, at least in the U.S., a lot of people that were involved in information sharing with the government with regards to what cyber criminals were doing and things like that. There's a bit of a reluctance now to share that information with some of the government agencies. A lot of them have also had their budgets cut and things like that too. So even if they do have any additional intelligence or telemetry, it's more difficult for them to share. So you have like a lot of institutions like InfraGard and things like that were really critical for sharing information, are becoming much less trusted or even valued within the security community. So I think that's one kind of interesting thing too, is that the intelligence side of things is a human component, right? It's not always just speeds and feeds and, IP addresses and things like that. A lot of it gets deeper into, what are the motivations? What are they targeting? What kind of information are they after? We've even seen like them take totally different spins, like with the North Korean IT worker stuff, right? Like that isn't necessarily something you're going to pick up on a threat intelligence feed, but there's some things that HR needs to learn about for how to conduct those types of interviews. And maybe there's some additional security controls that need to be in place for that, right? And that's a totally new thing, right? And it's a human component, right? And that's not something that you're going to get from technology. You need to, again, have a strategy, and you really need to be able to look at it from a human lens, right? And that's not always going to be like a speed or a seed or something like that. That a lot of times people think threat intelligence is. It's like, oh, it's a gray noise, or it's it's an RS feed or whatever of IP addresses, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, I feel like it opens this gap now that is being filled, which I'm very surprised about, and also happy about, of threat researchers and almost threat vigilantes now taking up the slack from the government and the telemetry and the research information there, and then putting it into those feeds. For those who don't know about the North Korea story is, it was a North Korean citizen hired by Google, right, Ken?
Yeah, there's tons of companies that have hired these North Korean IT workers.
And I proxied through their laptops to look like they're showing up in the US. And I think one of them too, one of the things that happened too, is they were getting fake IDs from this farm in Arizona. And that's where they were proxying through those laptops, and they're basically working and almost moonlighting at the same time, which again creates so much internal risk there. And I would say, for the argument too, is it calls for more UEBA, especially in this day and age too of remote work and proxies, and you actually have U.S. citizens. Not to get political, don't be abused. U.S. citizens seeing this be a moneymaker and literally just buying up a data farm and selling it to North Korea, selling it to China, selling it to Russia, and so on. They'll let them into these companies. And while some of these will be probably financially motivated, you do have, there is geopolitical attacks that happen there too.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Do you want to plug LimaCharlie real quick?
With LimaCharlie, again, LimaCharlie is a security operations platform. We focus a lot on the needs for MSSPs, managed security providers, MDRs. We're a truly multi-tenant solution, and we're incorporating a lot of really cool stuff on the AI side recently. So we're going to be doing a big launch where we're going to be talking about how we're leveraging Cloud Code in some of our tooling. And we have a bunch of demos that we're going to be showing as a result. So hope to see you all there.
Ken, thank you so much for being on here for the first episode of Breach Ready Radio. Really appreciate you. We've known each other for a long time, and it's great to be able to kind of have a platform for you to share some of your insights on. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Securonix helps security teams detect real threats faster, cut through noise, and respond with confidence. With unified analytics, intelligent investigation, and AI built to support human decision-making, teams can move from reacting to attacks to staying ahead of them. Learn more at Securonix.com. Interested in being on the podcast? Have a wild story to tell? Reach out to us at podcast@Securonix.com.